times and stuff, and then the minute like this, oh, I did the same thing.
Nonsense that is getting thrown in the internet is ridiculous, bruh.
Upper and lower, right? So then guess what? To get to the upper, your
Welcome back, YouTube, with Many Reasons here with your host, Kaylin. And this is our lovely guest today, but we'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Elisha.
All right, then. So today we're going to be talking about credit and budgeting, but we're going to let Cappers lead us into it. Then I'll go, and then we'll let Elisha go, all right? Let's go.
Yeah, so we're talking about budgeting and savings today, YouTube. So I think it's very important that we have, well, first of all, we should have courses and classes on it because a lot of people don't know how to budget their money correctly.
Facts.
You know, you grow up, you kind of get, mom and dad really don't kind of know. They're just kind of like skimming through life. You know, like, we need some money here, we need someone here, let's go to work. It's kind of like check to check, living like that. And that's kind of how it is right now in the market. You know, tariffs are high, inflation is going crazy. And I think a really good budgeter knows how to do everything. Like, I've talked to people, they go on trips, this and that, third, kind of readily available throughout the year. And it's like, how do you do that? Because my budgeting is just that good. It's not that my money is super high. I just know how to put it in places to where it's like, if I just put this much off to the side, or
then I can lock in on that trip that I want at the end of the year. No, that's
and
real though.
I've always tried to wonder that because it's like, dang, I'm good at it. I live good enough, and I get the day to day and month to month and year to year. But it's like, if I really excel at the budgeting and the planning and the savings, you could be farther ahead. Like my ex-girlfriend, right? So she'll always pay her bills a month ahead. So she's always having extra money to just be able to do because you're an excellent budgeter. But she also went to school for what was it? Accounting.
Okay.
You see, so already in the numbers, already know how to do all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Quick math. I'm not that good at it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I end this long rant short. I think that budgeting should be a really good skill that everyone knows because it can keep you ahead of the game, and when you're ahead of the game, life's a lot easier.
Oh, absolutely.
If you want to use a checkings account, savings account, or free checkings account, I would say get all three of them. But if you want to go about budgeting, then you can either use an app or you can get someone who's in the bank to do it for you. Personally, I would like to do it on my own. But when it comes to budgeting and my little pie chart, it's like I'll make sure that the money that I'm not spending goes over my budget of living. Like that's the one thing, main thing. But you know, some people they try to live outside their means, and I don't know why. Some people just try to like, I want to go be this, and this, but like, baby girl, your money ain't, my boy, your money ain't how it's supposed to be, and you're just trying to do excess overly things. It's like, I want to go trip here, go trip here, but you know, you still got, everyone got bills every month at the end of the month or the beginning of the month. So it's like, if I want to go here and my trip is $800, $1,000, and I know that my car note said $100. Yeah.
But when I started this conversation, I actually did it in a neglectful way because I did not bring up debt to income ratio. That also applies to the budget.
Of course it does.
She wants to cook on it.
We're going to let her cook.
No, absolutely. So there's a couple of different things when it comes to like budgeting and savings, of course. Obviously, you just touched on it, living within your means. You know, that is a huge thing. And we were having this conversation, obviously, off camera before we started about just how we live in a society that is so quick to just kind of get the newest and latest gadget and stuff. And that type of stuff is the stuff that puts you in debt. You know, do you really need that new iPhone 17 or can you kind of sit on the iPhone 12 that you've had for 5 years? You know, it's just one of those things. But when it comes to budgeting, the first step, of course, is always going to be to check on your finances. Be aware of how much, because, being in banking and, I didn't really speak on it, but I am I'm a relationship banker. And so, I see it every single day. And it's one of those things you would be surprised how many people don't really know what they take home. They know maybe like what their yearly salary is, but after taxes, like that's not the same amount that you're coming home with, So absolutely. So the first thing that we really need to do is you need to calculate your monthly income. From there, you need to look at like your needs, your wants, and like your savings and stuff. So just depending on like what works for you, because there's a lot of methods for budgeting. You have the 50, 30, 20, you have like your envelope system, and there's like the I think there's one called like zero budgeting, where you essentially have like you allocate all of your funds for something specific. There's no like, that surplus, it's going somewhere. So with the 50-30-20, that's going to be like your most common budgeting tool. That's where you put 50 of that should be going towards needs. So think like rent, think utilities, think just like, exactly. So like, just that, what you need. The 30 then is going to be like your wants. So like you want to go on vacation, you're going to put those funds and you're going to put it into an account that you allocate for trips. Or if you're doing the envelope method, you're putting that $10-$20 or however much you've budgeted for it in the envelope for traveling. Yes. Okay. And then your 20% should really go towards like savings. And the best advice that I had gotten when I first started in banking, I've been in banking for 7 years. This upcoming March will be 7 years for me. I started off as I was telling them a baby teller, so I didn't know a credit from a debit. And one of the best pieces of advice is that I got when it comes to saving and budgeting is you got to start small. Budgeting is one thing, but savings, I think it's really intimidating for people because, like you said, we kind of live in a society where people don't know left from right when it comes to their finances. And that's really, really difficult sometimes. You go to your parents because your parents are doing the whole adulting thing, and you come to find out they don't know anything either. I come from a really, really small town where you could really get by on like who you were and who you knew and a couple of dollars. The real world is not like that. We'll talk about credit here in a second and how much of everything is tied to credit. But nonetheless, when it comes to savings, the best advice I got was, even if it's $5, even if it's $25, it doesn't have to be hundreds of dollars every paycheck. Start small and build on it, and that's, just like with your credit and stuff like that, it's going to be the same exact thing. You're going to start small and all you can do is build on it, but it's that compounding, you're putting it in a monetary vehicle that's going to hopefully compound those funds. So think of it like that 401k. You may put in a certain percentage. Hopefully the job that you're working puts in a certain percentage, banks, banks and financial institutions have similar products like that. You may put in a certain amount. Well, hopefully you're putting it into a product that's going to earn you some interest on those funds too. So it's almost like that passive income. So it's a little bit of that. But, like I said, with the budgeting, that 50-30-20 method is really popular. Sometimes people, depending on who you listen to, there's like that envelope system. I personally have separate accounts for everything. So I have an account that my paycheck goes directly into. From there, I have what I call my utilities or my bill account. That's my 50%. It goes in there. Then I have a short-term savings. That's like my needs and wants. Like if I know Christmas is coming up, or I know I just went on a girls' trip this past August with one of my girlfriends. I was saving up for that trip. That was in my short-term savings account. And then that 20%, I have a high-yield savings account somewhere else at a completely different other bank. I can only get access to it online, and it's one of those things where if I need those funds, it takes me 2 to 3 days for that money to hit my actual checking account. So when I think about it, I have to think about it. It's not an instant thing. And it's one of those things where and then for emergencies, like lines of credits and stuff, credit cards we talked about. And we'll talk about that a little bit here in a second too, the difference between credit and debt, because there is a difference. It's kind of portrayed one way, and if you don't ask those questions, sometimes you can miss the mark and get yourself into a little bit of trouble. But nonetheless, that's kind of that's budgeting and savings kind of in a snapshot. The key takeaways there is just finding a plan that works for you, making sure that you know your monthly income, assessing your finances, and making sure you're allocating funds to where they need to go. Like you said, bills need to be paid first. Do not go on a vacation not having paid your light bill, and then pick that budgeting method, whether it be the 50-30-20, whether it be the envelope system, whether you open up separate accounts or have accounts elsewhere for savings and budgeting. And then another good thing is just with my bill account, I have things automatically coming out. I don't have to think about it. I know my bills are getting paid. All I'm doing is I'm balancing that account to the penny. I know exactly what's in it. My bills are coming out of it automatically, and then I can kind of do what I want with my other funds. Now, so go ahead.
Now with Now, with the thought of budgeting this and third, a lot of people aren't going to ask because it seems intimidating. Seems like you don't know. Seems
Yeah.
like you're unprepared. Seems like you're lacking somewhere.
Yeah.
Why do that and expose yourself? You see?
Well,
They're
I
not-
think-
the people aren't going to just readily available do
And
that.
I think it's, and I want to, as much as I hate to say it, some of it I think is like a little bit of like a pride thing. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say like I'm not the same exact way. It's one of those things where, sometimes it is hard to open up and have that conversation and say like, hey, I don't know, or hey, I have debt, or like, hey, I don't know how to structure this. But, like in my position, like I'm a relationship banker. I was telling y'all, like I wait on some people who are constantly like living in the red, and I wait on some people that have millions of dollars. But it's the same exact advice, but it's tailored towards the person that I'm, that I'm helping.
Meet people where they're at.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
And it's just one of those things where like realistically, like we live in a generation and like a time in a place like where a lot of people have debt, but either they've structured it properly, or or they're just kind of living outside their means and hoping and living paycheck to paycheck. I had someone tell me the other day, most people are one paycheck away from being on the streets.
Yep.
Which is true.
And that's kind of like a, if that doesn't scare you, if that doesn't make you want to figure it out, I don't know like what does. Like that intimidates me, so it's just one of those things like, another great thing is like that emergency fund, I'm sure you guys have heard about that. If you've ever looked into savings and budgeting, that's a big one that you'll come across. Again, Rome was not built in a day, and emergency savings funds is not going to happen in a month. It's one of those things you have to build up to. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this is like, as much as I hate to say it's a slow process, but you have to just continue on, and sometimes that, and like we were talking about earlier, like people don't see the people don't see the valley, they see the mountaintop, and savings is just the same exact way. I see people all the time and they're like, yeah, I have $30,000 saved up. I have an emergency fund, but do you know how long it took me to build that up?
Took you some time.
Exactly.
Progress is still progress.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like that, and another, and that's something I read a book last year called Atomic Habits, and it talks about that, like how these little tiny habits, are what creates, that big breakthrough. I mean, it's the same exact thing when it comes to finances. It's the little habits that you continue to build on that's going to be the breakthrough, whether it be that emergency fund, whether it be that trip, whether it be the ability to send your kid to college and them not have to take out a student loan. So again, start small, build on it. And, and with the emergency fund, like I said, you got to start somewhere, whether it be $5, whether it be a couple hundred, but the emergency fund, with that one, your goal is to save up 3 to 6 months. So if you do fall on hard times, if you do miss a paycheck, you get sick, you have that, you're at least good for 3 to 6 months. And that emergency fund, that cushion for at least like, and that should really more so be like the needs, needs and, your needs, and like if you've got any outstanding debts and stuff, making sure you can pay those credit card payments and stuff like that. So, or loan payments.
Off your credit cards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, YouTube, during the video, we're going to show schematics because we're going to get like representations of different plans, of the 3 plans that she described for budgeting. So for all y'all, they're gonna be in the comments. You can't comment and say, oh, well, I would like to see it, or this and that third. We're gonna post it video at the same time, so you can kind of like, oh, look at that, or look at this way, or I can do it like this, so it can help you out in life too, because we're gonna take tips from it as well. Just know, no one's perfect. Everyone's trying to get there at some point. We're all taking different paths. We're all just trying to win.
Yeah.
See?
We're never gonna bring you something that we're not either gonna try ourselves or follow. So
yeah,
tell you this right now.
Yeah. So all the tips and methods that she's gonna be showing us, because she's gonna send stuff to Kaylin, and he gonna get it to the cameraman Justin. Y'all know Justin back there. We're gonna get you right, because we're gonna use it.
Yeah.
So don't think it's just we trying to feed y'all. We trying to eat too.
Yeah. And another thing too, with budgeting and saving, it's not like a one size fits all. Like what may work for me may not work for you, and what works for us may not work for you. Or Justin. It's just one of those things where it's, at the end of the day, you have to find a method that works for you. You have to find something that works in is like works for your routine. It's like you're not, and another thing too, you got to think about it. We're starting small, but don't go like crazy, like balls to the walls with it. I meet some people that are like, well, I have a surplus of $300, so I'm going to put all $300 into my savings account. And I'm like, like, are you taking into consideration like inflation? Are you taking into consideration like, emergencies? Like, if you're putting everything, like, don't be so strict that you're like, that you're broke, like, don't do stuff like that. Like, you need to, like you said earlier, live within your means, like, live within your means, but make it where it's a habit that can stick and not something that, you get so burnt out because you're like, oh God, I don't have any money,
I think it's like when people start seeing the lavish lifestyle, like the new cars, new pools, houses and stuff like that, they'll measure it. They're like, okay, so I make this X amount a year, and I got like 700 always over. So it's like, man, I can start putting that to it. I can just either throw half of it in or majority of it in. And it's like, you don't know how the economy going to move. You don't know how stuff moves. Your bills, your this, your car might break down. You might need some new tires. Tires used to be cheap. They are not cheap no more.
No.
So, especially if you got a truck.
Yeah.
But it's like you have to literally start you have to measure how much I can spend, and if I can spend it, because if you can't spend it, that means you're not good. You're not good if you cannot spend it. If I can buy a PS5 that costs in the beginning $500 or $600, if I can do that 2-3 times over, that means I have an excess of surplus that I can spend. But if I can only buy it once, hold off.
Yeah.
Needs wants, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also one of those things like, I'm not saying that you can never buy something nice for yourself again, but like save for it, like put that aside and that, if that's like a want, like put it aside and put, like I said, don't put yourself in a position where you can't, but like we were talking to, like, we live in such a age now where, it's so easy. Like, you see, like we were talking about just a second before we started was, we're seeing seconds or, merely seconds of people's like days on social media. And so, and at the end of the day, like, comparison is like the thief of joy. Like, do not look at somebody else's life and be like, oh, I want that, and put yourself into debt trying to achieve that, because you do not know what that person is dealing with. Maybe that person is $50,000 in debt and they're just wearing it well, it's one of those things, like, you would be surprised. Like, I see people that come into the bank all the time, and, you look at them on social media, and there are some people that, they've got it locked down. They're good. You have other people that are $100,000 in debt, and they just went to like Bora Bora, and I'm just like, and I'm just like, well, I feel bad for your kids, because they're going to be the ones that they're going to have to suffer because of that, but it's one of those things, like, do not, like I said, like, that's the biggest thing for me too. And I tell my girlfriends all the time, like, I just turned 30. A lot of us are in our big girl jobs, or a lot of us have been, married and are, in that phase of life with marriage and kids. And I've told them, I'm like, do not do that to yourself, especially the first couple of years of marriage, because like that's just going to be a strain on you, So, but
I was going to say, so if you're buying something but it's kind of guaranteed to make you money back, so you invest into it, like what I just showed you.
Yeah, so exactly. So, and that's just like that whole like credit conversation like that we were having at the beginning of the morning, was just like, you have to have, as much as I hate to say it, and people hate hearing this, I'm a big like kind of Dave Ramsey person, like, cash is king. I really don't want debt, but you'll realize real quick, like, you have to have debt in order to kind of have credit, and it's like a double-edged sword. Like, I hate telling people that, and I hate having to acknowledge that, and I hate living in a world where it's like that, but that's the reality of it. But also too, when it comes to investments, like, you have to take that risk, like when it's not as cut and dry, unfortunately, with things, you have to, we were talking about, like, you have to put a little bit of skin in the game to get anything back, like, if you play it safe, like, you're not, like, you may play it safe and it may work out for you, but rarely like does it, and that's kind of something I've had to like learn in banking too. Like, ultimately I would love to move into securities, which is going to be like your investments and stuff, and more like long-term goals. But I tell people all the time, I'm just like, yeah, you may not want to pay a penalty on this product, or you may not want to pay the interest on this product because you're putting your funds in something that's earning a lot more for you. But think about it this way. Like if you're earning $100, but you're only getting 80, it's better than zero, you know?
Yeah.
And that, but but you're losing the $20. Well, I'm still losing the $20. Are you really going to harp on $20 in more than in 5 years?
Sometimes,
Like,
sometimes that's 20.
I know. I mean, no, it's like that.
Sometimes
It's,
the
it's like that conversation where like, if I saved that $5 when I was 13, I would have been in a lot better place now, and it's just like, you see stuff like now with like the market, like we can't buy a house right now because we don't have like, a lot of us don't have the down payment for it. And you're like, oh, had I saved that $15 when I was 5, I would have been in a lot better of a place. But no, I mean, realistically, and that kind of, segues into like the whole credit conversation. Like you have to have credit. You have to have debt in order to have credit, but it's really about the way that you structure it. Okay. So, and it's one of those things, like there's a huge difference between credit and debt, like credit is what like lenders allow you to borrow. Okay. So think of it like the easiest way for me to explain this is like in terms of a credit card. Okay. You have a credit card, your line of credit is $5,000. That is your borrowing power. If you have that paid down to zero at the end of each month, great. Lenders come in and they go ahead. Yeah. No, you're fine. You're fine.
We're segueing to the next comment. YouTube, we're going to cut this. I love y'all, but we're not going to give you everything in the first video.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going to flood y'all.
It's going to segue. This one's about budgeting and savings. Like I said, we're going to put up the plans. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next episode.
Many reasons. We're out.